You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello and welcome to Garibaldi Red, as we're joined during the international break as ever by a former Forest player to look back on their career and life today. And delighted to be joined by a former Forest striker this week in Paul McGregor. Paul, are you well?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Matt, how are you?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. Like you were saying before, if you've got your health and you're happy, then you're not too bad. And all good on that front, so can't complain. We'll get into your life and your career in a minute, but I think I saw you on the TV at the Liverpool game, unless I'm wrong, sat near Gary Birtles. Were you there?
That was me with my daughter Cherry, yeah. I was in one of the lounges and I text Johnny Owen, what's the attire? So having been in the game for a while, I know that the rote response to any ex-player is shirt and tie, because people think you're representing the club even when... So I get in there and everyone's in jeans and trackies and stuff. I was like, oh God, and I'm stood in a shirt and tie. The thing was, I haven't really got a smart coat, you know. So I went to the wardrobe and dug out like it's a really nice Belstaff, like this brown thing. It's lovely. It was really expensive when I bought it about 20 years ago. And I went round to a mate's house and dropped my car off because I was going in with him and his son. And his missus went, oh, you look like a geography teacher. I was like, oh, for crying out loud. I really do, don't I? And then my phone started pinging like mad at the game. And I didn't answer because I'm sat with my daughter. And half time I've had a look. And I've been on TV, haven't I? And there must have been 6 people telling me that I look like a geography teacher. Not physics, not a cool sports teacher. Everyone went geography. So
I was going off on a tangent. I remember I was in a stag do in Coventry recently.
Johnny.
I was in this stag do in Coventry recently. We'll come to football in a minute for people who are listening, wanting to hear about football. But I mean, I'm almost 40, and there are these young lads there who are about 20. Pathetic scenes. And they said, "What do you do?" And I told them what I did. And they said, "No, you don't." And they said, "You're a geography teacher." Like, I said to you before, we don't swear, so I can't swear. But yeah, it must be the look. Are you growing into middle age gracefully? I mean, you're a music guy, you're a fashion guy. How do you find that transition into late 40s?
What's a fashion guy?
Well, I don't know. You have a style. I've seen the photos of you. You have a look, don't you?
I like clothes. Yeah. I love it. I just, to be honest, like I was saying earlier, in regards to health, like I play football quite a lot. I run or walk in weighted vests every day. I've never really, I've been fitter because, you know, you've got to be super fit to play football at the top level. But, you know, I'm really fit. I look after myself. I'm healthy. Life's good. I feel good in, like, physically within my body. I can carry my weight. I can press ups, sit ups. I feel strong. I feel good. Very rarely get ill. So I'm good in that sense. Mentally enjoying it. Middle age. I genuinely think doing the Red Dogs podcast really put me in quite a healthy place with looking back and not nostalgia to some degree, but being able to look back at one's life and minor achievements with a sense of, oh, that was actually it's quite cool that people think what we did back then is that side, and a few of my goals and that kind of thing was great. And like speaking to people and people coming, like the feedback we get from people saying, oh, that time, it gave me so much joy, even just thinking about, you know, even during the pandemic, people saying, you know, the podcast has given me so much joy just listening back to the 90s and those times. They were fantastic. The last great Forest side, etc., etc. So you just start to kind of relax into it and go, well, you know what? Not everyone's done that. It's a nice thing to have done. So I'm at an age now where I've kind of come through all that. Oh, I can't be harking on about this or harking on about that. If people enjoy listening to stuff or having a chat, you know, then cool. I'm all for it. Don't mind it.
So going back to that Liverpool game then, was it an interesting watch for you? Because you're from that part of the world. I assume your loyalties, were they more Forest, or were you wanting Liverpool to win the game?
Right. I find this mental. You're a Forest fan, right?
Yes.
Is there anything playing for another team or anything else that would stop you supporting Nottingham Forest?
No, I mean, if I played for one club my whole career, like Carragher was an Everton fan who played for Liverpool his whole career, I don't know where his loyalties lie. But no, I'd always want Forest to win, I'll say.
So I went for a pint with Fordy and the chairman the other week, and obviously it was just after the draw, and they were going, "So who are you going to be supporting?" I was like, "I'm a Liverpool fan. I've supported Liverpool my whole life. I was born in Liverpool. My family are all Scousers. I support Liverpool." Now, that said, I wanted Liverpool to win. I did. But it's kind of a win-win or a no-win, whichever way you look at it, for me, because loads of my mates are Forest fans. You know, I do stuff with the club, and I love Forest, genuinely love Nottingham Forest. So if Forest had to beat Liverpool, then I'd have been supporting Forest at the Hill to go and win the FA Cup, absolutely 100%. And I'd have been pleased for the fans. I genuinely would have been pleased for the fans, pleased for the city, pleased for the team and the gaffer and the lads, the players, because they're in a phenomenal place right now, and it's amazing to watch. And I'm saying I'm a Liverpool fan, but I support Plymouth Argyle, I support Nottingham Forest as well. But if anyone comes head to head, Liverpool's my team in my heart, you know. So I'm never going to switch that ever. And I would hope anybody would think less of me if I did, by the way. So yes, wanting Liverpool to win, enjoyed the spectacle, loved the fact that the City ground is absolutely bouncing, just insane. You know, I've not seen it like that for years and years and years. So that's just absolutely wonderful to see. And see Forest give a good account of themselves against who I believe is the best team in the world right now. Even if it was their third tier, they were fantastic. It was a great game and should have scored.
Yeah,
should have scored, and it would have been a different game altogether. You know, the in inverted commas, the penalty from where we were sat. I was like, that's a clear penalty. I was sat next to Woney, and I was like, that's clearly a penalty. But he's got to go down proper because he kind of didn't go down, but did. And then we came in at half time or full time, I think it was. And when I came down, it was deadly silent in the lounge. And the screens were all on. It was because everybody was watching. It was the replay of the penalty. So everyone was watching. And it was the close up. And then literally the whole room went, ugh, it's not a penalty.
What age did you leave Liverpool then to come to Nottingham?
The official story is work dried up in Liverpool for my parents. I was only about 3. And yeah, you know, the docks were closing and all that kind of stuff. Work was drying up. I was 3, so it was early 70s. So it was not a good time for employment in Liverpool. And my dad's cousin was here, and he was like, "There's loads of opportunity in Nottingham, loads of stuff happening." So we came. The unofficial story is my old man had to get the hell out of Dodge. And we'll leave that there.
Everyone knows that football is one of your passions and music is the other one. I suppose Liverpool, the city, and your parents coming from there, Liverpool's synonymous with football and music. So what kind of house are you growing up in? Is it a bit of both, or are you straight into football? What's it like as a kid?
My parents weren't really into music as such. My mum, the music I remember my mum playing was stuff like Patsy Cline, John Denver, Johnny Mathis, some Beatles, Trogs. We had those records knocking about. My dad's never listened to a record in his life. The pair of them used to go and see the Beatles at the Cavern, and it's kind of like the stories you hear about people in Manchester in the 80s who would like, "Oh, you saw Joy Division?" And they were like, "Oh my God, they were on in the same boozers every week. They were so boring. I saw Joy Division 5 times." They were that bored of seeing the Beatles. My mum switched allegiances, even as a Scouse girl, to the Stones. So she was more of a Stones fan. But I grew up loving the Beatles. Football was around in the family. My dad's an Evertonian, so my dad's a Toffee. His dad was a Toffee. His uncle used to get him tickets for the game, games at Goodison, but he was a runner. So he was a cross-country runner. So he used to make my dad run 8 miles to Goodison to the match and 8 miles home. So growing up, mid to late 70s, early 80s, I grew up both in Bootle and in Chilwell, in Nottingham. Going up to any holiday we had, it'd be spent in Bootle with family and friends up there. And so I grew up kind of in between, up until the age of about 10, 11, 12. So at that time, Liverpool were just a winning machine, and all my family up there were Reds. So I supported Liverpool instead of Everton. And to my dad's credit, he never forced it upon me. He bought me an Everton shirt once, which I loved. It was a great one with the Umbro diamond stripe down the sleeve. I loved it. It was great. I played in that for about a season. Then my uncle bought me a Liverpool shirt with Barnes on the back, and that was it.
What about getting into Forest then? What age were you scouted, and how did it go in the early days there?
I came through the ranks really at the earliest level. I was a little bit of a late bloomer because I stuck to teams that I wasn't really a mercenary as a player, as a young lad, and my dad just wanted me to enjoy my football. So I played for All Whites. And at that level, Clifton All Whites, at that level, we finished 4th or 5th in the league. There was a team called Pheasant Colts that were winning everything. The same on Sunday, I played for Sandacre Town, but there was a team called Little Overdazzlers. This was in the Derby League, that were winning everything. And if you wanted to get scouted, you had to be at the top sides. So I had friends and players who I was playing against who I felt I was as good as, if not better than. So-and-so has just gone off to train with Manchester United. So-and-so has just gone for a trial at Tottenham. So-and-so has just gone for a trial at Forest or whoever. So at the age of 13, 14, me and my dad just looked at it and went, right, we've got to go and sign for these big clubs, but we've got to go and sign for these top teams. And then from that moment on, there's only a finite amount of scouts, aren't there? And they're going to go and watch the top teams at youth level, particularly back then. It wasn't as well scouted as it is now. Nothing goes under the radar now. So yeah, I was going to Forest on trial, and then everyone started knocking really. So Everton, Sheffield, Wednesday, Tottenham. So clubs started knocking. I signed for Forest because I started scoring. I was a goal scorer as a centre forward. So I started scoring. I went from being top scorer to scoring a lot of goals, like obscene amount of goals, because I kicked onto that next level. Well, if he's scoring 90 a season, I want to be scoring 130. I just had that competitive streak in me. And I did that, and I was achieving that. So one rainy afternoon, it was a morning actually, up at Gresham. I'd been playing with Forest boys on the Sunday. What was it? It was Mick Rayner, I think, just slapped a contract in front of us. We'd been promised a dinner with Brian Clough and taken out, wined and dined and all that, which all the out-of-town lads did, but the local lads kind of got a bit of a bum deal. So I signed for Forest, schoolboy forms at 14 on the back of my dad's Mark II Cortina in the razzing down rain, and that was that. There were scouts in the car park that wanted to talk to me and talk to my dad, just sat watching us. I signed my life away in front of scouts from other clubs. And yeah, so that's how that started. And then unfortunately, the thing I look back at that I do genuinely regret is, what do you do if you're a 14-year-old kid not massively bothered about school? I used to enjoy reading. I was quite creative, but not that fussed about any of the other stuff. I just didn't pay any attention from that moment on. I had no doubt in my mind that I was going to be a professional footballer, and that was it, which is stupid because so many young lads have no doubts in their minds that they're going to be professional footballers. But the naivety of youth paid off in my case. So left school with 3 GCSEs above C. The rest were Ds. Didn't try at all. I actually remember the summer of revision, just being sat there and my mum going, don't worry, you'll be all right. I remember it being really warm. Everybody was revising and I was just in the street, in the court in Chilwell having a kickabout. Had my last summer holidays with the warning that I need to turn up fit. Had a few runs and then going from Mr. Maltby being my head teacher to Brian Clough being my manager.
I better ask you about Clough then. I mean, I don't know, this is the latter days of Clough and it's not the best years of Clough, everyone would admit, but what was your experience of him then?
Bittersweet, up and down, schizophrenic. I have some, some really dark things, but really genuinely beautiful light things as well. Memories, moments. For example, he loved a goal scorer, right? So, because he was a goal scorer himself. So if I managed to get a couple of goals in the youth team, which I invariably did, or a hat trick or whatever, he'd be like, Blondie, down the corridor, like, no training for you today, run me a bath. So I'd have to run him a bath. Like, run yourself one, son, we're going to have a chat. So great memories of kind of like surreal moments. Brian Clough sat invariably in an ice bath, a cold bath for reasons, and me in a nice red hot bath, Radox bath, the lads training, just the injured lads milling around, and he's sat there going, how are you, mum and dad? How are you doing? Have you got a girl? Are you going steady? Yeah. Just lovely memories of sitting having a chat for 20 minutes. And I remember we won the league and cup double as a youth team, did really well in the FA Youth Cup as well. I think got to the semis. He made us go out, I think, if my memory serves me well, it was against Sunderland towards the end of the season, beautiful sunny day. And he made us do a lap with the trophies of the City ground. And Sunderland fan gave us a round of applause. All the Forest fans were brilliant as usual. And he walked us into the centre circle and he came and gave every single one of us a big hug and a big kiss. And he proper had tears in his eyes, so proud of us, so proud of his young team, his young men. And yeah, some darker times that, I don't particularly think we don't need to go into too deeply, but, I'd be the one that would go and fix his drinks in the morning because he'd ask me to, and I'd have to go in and fix him a drink first thing in the morning and make sure he's in the sauna all right, and make sure, so yeah, it was a bit dark at times. I remember he spoke to my dad in a particular way at a youth team game for no reason whatsoever, just went into a tirade, a drunken tirade at my dad. And my dad just wanted to absolutely murder him. And again, actually, funnily enough, yesterday in the pub, my dad mentioned that. And he's just like, I don't know how I didn't hit him. Don't know how I didn't do it. It was only because of your career. For me, he was genuinely a genius. I don't think that's in dispute in any way. And to have been around him and around the club at that time is a real honour. And again, looking back on these things is something you go, when you actually start saying it out loud at a certain age, that you played under Brian Clough and you worked under Brian Clough, it's insane. It's crazy. It's such an amazing thing to have done. And I remember more than any of the light moments or dark moments, I remember how it felt to be part of the club at that time. The pride of honour, the badge that you wore everywhere you went as a Nottingham Forest player. I remember that feeling more than anything else. I think that stays with me. But he was just being around that daily was special, for better or worse, really.
When he leaves, obviously the club are relegated.
Yeah.
Oh, my maths isn't great. I'm trying to work out your age here. You're kind of at the age where you might be breaking into the first team. Do you see that as an opportunity? And then Stan Collymore comes in, and is it a frustrating time for you trying to make your way from being a prolific goal scorer in the reserves to being a first team player under Frank Clark?
Well, it was scary time. It was all anybody knew. If you remember, there were people crying in the streets. There's that amazing footage of fans, crying, telling him not to go and stuff, and he's got tears in his eyes. It was. Funnily enough, by the way, his final interview.
Yes, was doing the rounds on Twitter. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah, so I was in that room with him.
All right.
So I was just off camera. So as his kind of go-to youth team player, I was just off camera in that room watching that live. So I've got very clear memories of that. So I remember that day vividly. And by the way, how many managers could you think of? A single manager in the modern era who would get relegated and get a reception like that at the end of the game?
Yeah,
they were on the pitch chanting his name. Just, amazing, absolutely amazing. That said, in terms of my personal career, I didn't know what was next. He'd given me my debut in the first team, 5 minutes at the baseball ground. It's about 10 minutes, actually. Weirdly enough, it's not documented anywhere. But I played for the first team for it was about 9 or 10 minutes at the baseball ground, and I managed to get a shot off. So Clough actually did give me my debut, and then went, and no one knew what was really coming. I mean, I'd scored 49 goals in 51 games in the youth team. Got into was doing all right in the reserves, but had a bit of a stagnant first season. There's a little bit of a transition because they bought Stan. Was I going to be a centre forward? I mean, I was a goal scorer as a centre forward my whole life. Or because I was fast, could I be converted as a winger? So I went through this sort of transitional period, and I turned my ankle a couple of times. So I had a bit of a frustrating first season in the reserves, but then I had a good pre-season, and they just said, listen, right wing from now on, off you go. And so I had a cracking first half of that second season in reserves, where every time I got the ball, I can remember that feeling as well. I just felt invincible. I didn't think anyone could catch me. Any left back anywhere ever. I just thought, I can rinse you, no problem. And the confidence was insane. It's probably the most confident I've ever been, even more than when I was at Plymouth scoring for fun. But I remember that confidence. It scares me now, the amount of confidence I had as a young lad. And that's when I started breaking into the first team squad, getting taken everywhere, and being in and around the first team and getting moved up to the first team dressing room, which was a really big step, because you have to, some big characters in that dressing room, some really big characters in that dressing room. Stan, Piercy, Chetz, Woney, Stoney, Coops, Desi, Jet, some big names in there. You can't be a wallflower in there. You got to come in with a bit of oomph. So that was quite something. But I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed that dressing room. It was great. So becoming part of all of that was a load of fun, and kind of tying the music thing. I'd been in a band since school as well. I was in a school band. The school band was the thing that kind of everyone still remembers, funnily enough, Merck. But they were my school band. We were just kicking about. The fact that I started breaking into the first team whilst in my school band was, a little detrimental to me in terms of music, because we weren't ready, and we were getting offered some decent gigs, and we were in the middle pages of the bizarre area section of the Sun and all this kind of stuff. It's just because of what I was doing with the first team. But
sorry to interrupt. Does that hurt your first team thing? Because that creates a perception around you, rightly or wrongly, that you're not focused.
I had this conversation with Frank Clark when he was on the Red Dogs podcast. Like I got painted, like it couldn't have been more wrong. Like the majority of the younger lads were going to the Black Orchid, Ritz's, at the drop of a hat, at any opportunity. And I was rehearsing with my band. We might have one or two beers, but that was it. I'd be rehearsing, just making music, writing music, hanging out with the band. And everyone just assumed I had the life of Liam Gallagher, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. People say, I remember Frank Clark saying afterwards, after our podcast, that he was like, you were torn, weren't you? I was like, no, I wasn't. I made music. I was in a band. That would have been fun to be in a band as well. But I wanted to be a professional footballer for Nottingham Forest. But nothing turned my head. It really didn't, genuinely didn't. It was a hell of a time, and like coming into the first team dressing room and then bringing all that music thing with me. My personal manager at the time was a guy called Andy Copping that used to run Rock City and book bands for Rock City. So I was getting the lads in everywhere, anywhere we needed to go, we'd get in. And then we just had this great little gig crew going to everything. We all went to Main Road together. We got slapped by Man United. I think it was 5-1 at Old Trafford. And it was the night of Main Road, of Oasis at Main Road. And Frank Clark said, "You're not going." We're all like that. Right. Anyway, he let us go in the end because I think Piercy had a word with him. But yeah, V92, Noel Gallagher, with Paul Weller, and we all went there, and we'd go down to see the Sheds in London, and we were gigging quite a lot. We were going around everywhere, really going to see bands. So the dressing room became really tight around it, and Euro 96 as well with Piercy and his exploits there. It was an amazing time to be in that dressing room. Obviously being in a band and being, in inverted commas, the Britpop footballer, whilst Piercy's doing that, and then we're going to gigs everywhere. It was crazy, I remember when we went to V92, the NME had posters up, those big billowing freestanding sort of billboards on poles, like flags sort of thing. Is this the coolest footballer in Britain? With a picture of me with like these big shades on. I remember doing the photo shoot, thinking I was Liam Gallagher or Ian Brown or something. And we got out. We were actually in a limo. God, this sounds disgusting. So we got out the limo, and all these posters of me were everywhere. It was just balmy, absolutely balmy, but great fun. I mean, such good fun. Did it tarnish my name as a footballer? Probably, yeah. I mean, Ron Atkinson, when he came on the scene, unfortunately, he'd done a piece in, I think it was Match magazine about 2 months before he came to Forest, where he'd listed the top 5 young centre forwards in the country, and I was one of them, with Robbie Fowler, Noel Whelan, someone else. Heskey might have been in it, not sure. So I was thinking, when Ron Atkinson, he's going to play me, like he's going to throw me. This is going to be great. But he's walked on the training ground. Everyone's there, first team squad, everybody, youth team. And the first words out of his mouth, with everybody there, were, right, and he rubbed his hands together. Let's see what we've got here then. And then pointed at me and went, because I don't want any rock stars in my team.
Oh, no.
And then, honestly, the blood drained out of me. I was just like, oh my God, like, what are you on about? And that was that. I knew my time was up at Forest at that moment. Dreadful man, boy, dreadful man.
How do you reflect on your Forest career overall then? Because obviously, there's the famous goal against Lyon, and then you score against Man United. When I hear you talking about the goals you scored in the reserves and as a kid and how prolific you were, do you think, a stroke of luck here, a different manager there, different moments, you might have been not Stan Collymore, but you might have been, the guy who scores 50 goals for the club, not 3.
A little bit of a sliding doors moment. Yeah, I do. Might sound egotistical, but I think if I'd have been thrown in as a number 9 and given a run of 10 games, I'd have scored, because I didn't know anything else. I learned how to play on the right wing, and I could be effective on the right wing because I was fast. But I was a goal scorer. I'd broken records at every age scoring goals. Forest had paid money for centre forwards, so I had a glass ceiling, unfortunately, at Nottingham Forest. It was there. It was very real. You could argue that if I'd continued to score goals in the reserves, I'd have just been thrown in anyway, but I did. When I got thrown on, I did well and scored goals. And, you know, that's not just me. You can ask most Forest fans who were around at that time still remember me as being this exciting young thing that when came on, lifted the place and was exciting and was always a goal threat. So, yeah, part of me thinks if I'd have been at Man United with the class of 92, which I was class of 92, I might have been the centre forward there. But it wasn't to be, you know, and I'm not precious about it. I completely get that they bought Brian Roy, they bought Stan Collymore. And I fully respect if Frank Clark didn't feel the way that I did. You know, that's his prerogative. It's absolutely fine. I personally know I would have scored goals at Nottingham Forest if I'd have been thrown in as a number 9 or a number 10. Off you go. You've got 10 games, 20 games. You're going to be first name on the team sheet. Off you go and score goals. That's your job. I'd have scored goals.
You had a better career than 99.9% of kids who, you know, get somewhere near it. You did well at Plymouth, and then I think you finished at Northampton. What are the latter years of your career like? Is the adrenaline rush not the same, I guess, of running out of the city grounds?
Not when you're running out of Sixfields, no. Hellhole. Awful place. Soulless pit, Sixfields is. Matt Ford said, your career at Forest was like a Christmas number 1. So there are plenty of players who played for Forest, who played 100 games, 150 games, 200 games possibly, that people don't remember like they remember me, because they remember the Christmas number 1. I kind of got in there, blasted it, and then was gone. I didn't have to do the hard slog. I didn't put in 6 middling albums. I wrote Do They Know It's Christmas and then buggered off, essentially. Then went to Preston on loan under David Moyes, which was an amazing experience, really. He brought me in as cover, which was a bit upsetting because it was a really good club. He was a great manager. They had some great players, Johnny Macken, Sean Gregan. I mean, they had some cracking players, and they went up. But he said, listen, there's no intention of giving you a contract. You're here as cover. He said, but I'll tell you what. He said, I'll work with you one-on-one for as long as you're here, for as long as you want. So I spent those 3 months on the bench, playing the reserves now and again. He was brilliant with me. Didn't slog me in the reserves. And I had one-to-one sessions with David Moyes for 3 months, good 2.5 months, which I'll be forever grateful for. He didn't have to do that, you know. I wasn't going to be playing for him the season after, but he just gave his time to coach a young lad who he liked, which I thought was brilliant of him. And he told me up front, flat out, we won't be signing you, but I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you, I'll look after you. So, and that's all you want in any job, right? A bit of honesty. The amount of managers I had, particularly when I went to Northampton, were just not good people, and would lie. And in particularly one moment where I was having a bit of a rough time of it. I was back at my mum and dad's house. I was not long with just started going out with, who ended up being my wife, who I'm still with. We're living out of bin bags at mum and dad's house, and it's not going great in the first team at Northampton. And I remember being sat on the end of the bed most days going into training, just sat there, like not crying or feeling depressed or upset, no real feelings, but like tears streaming, just going, I don't want to go. I just don't want to be there. There's nothing exciting about being at that club. Didn't enjoy it. The money was good. That was it. I'd have still been at Plymouth I should have stayed at Plymouth, to be fair, because they went up 2 years on the bounce when Paul Stobart came in, and I'd have been a Plymouth legend there, like those boys rightly are. But yeah, so I remember sitting down. I won't mention his name because I think it's dreadful of him, but he'll know who it is. And I went in to see him. I said, Gaffer, I'm struggling. I don't even want to be a footballer anymore. Like, my love for this club has taken my love of this game and killed it, trodden all over it. I don't want to play in Northampton Town's reserves. It's not why I became a footballer. My first boss was Brian Clough. My second one was Frank Clark. I played in the Premier League, played in Europe. I get that you have to do your time. Sometimes you have to come step away and come back. I've done that at Plymouth. I am not playing for Northampton Town Reserves. I'm kind of done. I think I'm done. By the time I left his office, it was a Friday. And on Fridays, we had to walk through the club shop, sign the balls, sign the shirts, and then go back into the dressing room for the final meeting. By the time I'd signed the shirts and got back to the dressing room, I was a laughing stock of the dressing room because I'd gone to the gaffer and told him that I was struggling. And he'd just gone down to the dressing room and told the senior players that exactly what I just said. The only time in my life I'd ever faked an injury. And that's not me. You ask anybody, that is not me. I am not that person. Honest to a fault, stand up, you know, I was just like, you are not, but I won't have my pants pulled down, just not having it. Trying to play him in the reserves on a Wednesday afternoon, fixing friendlies just so I'd have to play in them to try and get me out of the clubs I was on a decent wage. Car's broken down, mate. What? Car's broken down. No, it hasn't. You're in your bedroom. Yeah, car's broken down. I'm not coming in. I just wouldn't let anyone beat me. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I remember sitting with my dad in the Victory Club in Beeston, the working men's club there, and saying to him, listen, it's done. I've had enough. I don't want to play. I don't want to be a footballer anymore. And he was heartbroken because it was his dream. It was his dream for me, but he'd seen how bad it had become, really. And even when you were playing first team for Northampton, like playing at Sixfields on a Tuesday night in front of 3,000 whining, moaning Midlanders, I couldn't care less. Not interested in doing that at all. And my dad was brilliant. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, and this is the truth, our name, my band's name, Ulterior, had just been put on the front cover of the NME. And I'd said, well, listen, I'm not 18, I'm 28. You know, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to go and do that. And that's what I did. Went and didn't watch a football match, kick a football for 5 years, went and hit London, went on that scene, toured Europe, Japan, South Africa, released 2 albums, toured with some legendary bands, played some brilliant shows, created memories, and had a second career doing that. Absolutely loved it.
Is there a similarity between a football crowd and a music crowd in terms of, I don't know, a common purpose of being there together? Is one better than the other, do you think?
You've got more control over what happens. Being a frontman as well, standing in front of a crowd and looking in people's eyes and feeling that, not control in a despot sense, you know, just in a sense that you're a conduit, everything's coming through you out into the room, you know, like the band, the power, the energy of the band's coming through you and out into the room, and you're looking at the crowd and you got the whites of their eyes and they're either going or they're just stood, and you have real control over that. The reason why big groups of people fill stadiums or big groups of people fill concert halls, that connection, that magic that happens when there's a sporting event or a musical event, and there's a back and forth, this energy that happens between the players and the crowd, or the band and the crowd. When those two things, I mean, I love bands that like play at crowds, like the Jesus and Mary Chain or Suicide, or you know, I love that energy. I do love that. But then I also, it's not the same. It's not the same as when there's a band and a crowd doing this, and the crowd are all singing the words back, and that's something that's communal. So both those things happen at football and within a gig environment, and they're magical. They're magical in different ways, but you're more in control of it as a front man. And it's more visceral. It's more it's more tangible as a front man. You know, you can almost taste it. But that said, I've never played music in front of 45,000 people, 50,000 people. I've played at Anfield, Old Trafford and Highbury, these places, White Hart Lane. I've played at all the Premier League clubs. Playing in front of crowds like that is something else.
So what's your relationship like with football then? Because obviously it's given you and anyone who plays a lot, but it sounds like it took a lot out of you and a lot away from you in a lot of senses. How do you reflect on that kind of bond you have with football?
Well, I came away from it, didn't want to touch it ever again, wasn't interested, missed the Saturdays, missed the playing, missed the crowds, that magic that we spoke of, I missed that. Didn't miss training, didn't miss the pre-seasons, didn't miss the, in inverted commas, banter. There's lots of it I didn't miss the politic of it. Yeah, I came away from it entirely not being fussed. So I rarely even watch Liverpool either. I was so into making music and being on that, just doing a band at 200 mile an hour properly. I didn't even look back. And then a friend of mine who I grew up with, who still lives really close to my mum and dad, said, "Listen, I've just formed a team. It was a local team in Chilwell. They were called Chilwell Vipers and they played on the Rec in Chilwell, the park I grew up playing football on." He said, "Would you come down and do some sessions?" I was like, "Oh, mate, like I'm not a coach. I don't enjoy it. I don't like coaching." He was like, "For me, would you just come down?" So I was like, "Okay." So I went down. I don't know if you know Chilwell, but Chilwell's split by the Rec, by the park. On one side, there's Inham Nook. On the other side, it's a little bit nicer. It's still council houses and courts, but Inham Nook is where all the smack is, and it's naughty. And if you're going to get robbed, it's from someone from Inham Nook. So we'd be on the park, and you got all the Nook lads shouting pedo over at me and the guy who I'm doing the team with. And it's hilarious. And anyway, I fell in love with this group of kids. I just fell in love with their personalities. I was coming down every week. Before I knew it, I had 3 years managing just this group of lads. And what was wonderful was literally from scratch, from zero, those kids picked me back up again and gave me my love of football back. And Lee Bartle, he's now a personal trainer, a wonderful one, by the way, brilliant one. So I'm giving Lee a little punt there. I gave him my first Forest shirt at the Christmas do, the end of season do, the trophy do. And he was Simon Coleman, the guy, my mate, that's his son. And it was just symbolic, really, of just they gave me my love of football back, that team and those kids, that group of kids. And I still see them about now, and they always stop and say, "Oh, they've got kids of their own now," and it's great. But I remember those days very, very fondly. And then from there, started playing five-a-side again. Started watching matches, going down Forest with my friends now and again, and it all just slowly came back organically. And it was unforced. So my love for football is stronger than ever. I'm an absolute lunatic watching football or playing it. You ask any of the lads I play with on a Tuesday night, I'm a desperate winner, screaming and shouting. I'm tearing up and down the pitch past 18, 19-year-olds running past. I'm a lunatic. I only want to win. I love it. I love it. And like I say, again, with the podcast enabling me to sort of look back on a career, I feel back to where I should be now with my relationship with it. And yeah, I've got a really good relationship with football now, and I love it. And every time I play, be it 8-a-side on a Tuesday night or 11-a-side, I sometimes play for Nottingham Sikh Lions vets team. Great bunch of lads. Sometimes play for them on a Sunday. So it just feels like an utter privilege to be nearing 50 and to still be this fit and being able to do 90 minutes or play on a Tuesday regularly. Because, you know, at my age, you're only ever a snapped Achilles or an ACL away from a career ending or never being able to play again.
You regrets about retiring early? I mean, or did you worry about what football would have done to you if you carried on playing till you were 35 and the path, if you carried on down that Northampton path, would it have been too bleak for you?
I got offered the chance to go and talk to Hull. And I thought, why do I want to go and move to Hull? Play for Hull. That's frying pan fire. Nothing against Hull, but God almighty, like I couldn't be less interested. I genuinely would have much rather gone and worked in a shop, gone and worked for Paul Smith in a shop all day long with and then gone to Forest. I would have rather have done that. Northampton doubled my wages from Plymouth to they doubled my wages overnight. It meant nothing. That having that money meant nothing. I had a Range Rover and stuff, and it just meant nothing. It's nice and that, but you know, like, so what? We sat on the end of the bed, not wanting to go to work. That's not a place to be for anybody. And I would urge anybody to change that about their lives if that's ever the situation. You can't live like that. I just thought, no, mate, not doing it. The only regret I possibly have is Paul Sturrock sat me down when I was at Plymouth. And, you know, my nickname at Plymouth was McGod. They loved me down there and I love them. The fans, the place. I adore the club. I adore the city, the people. Oh, wonderful place. I could even live there. It's brilliant. Still got loads of great friends down there. Paul Sturrock came in. We got on really well. He was funny. We had a good crack, and he was like, listen, we've not got any money, but we'll have money next year. I want to build a team around you. But I can only offer you $5,000 a year more to stay. Because I'd scored goals, you know, there were clubs sniffing. And I was like, Gaffer, like my girlfriend's left me, which she did at the time, moved to London because she was on that scene. So she moved out to London. So I was rattling around in this massive house in Plymouth. It was before the boom, actually, in Plymouth. So I had a 9-story house with a roof garden. Like, it was insane. I bought it for like 110 grand. Sold it for 180, thinking I'd done a job. 2 years later, it was on the market for 650. I was heartbroken. Anyway, Paul Sturrock said, you know, I want to build a team around you, but we can only offer 5. I was like, mate, they've offered to double my wages nearer home, like 45 minutes from my house, my mum and dad's house. I've got to go. And he's like, you'll regret it. And I did. And I don't have regrets in any sense, really, because my life's led where it's led and everything's groovy. But they went up that year and then went up again the year after that. And all the players that I was playing with are absolute utter club legends now. Paul Watt and David Frio, who was at Forest as well, who's a wonderful footballer. So yeah, should have stayed there really, but I don't. Plymouth's the sort of place you don't really get out of as much as I love it. It's miles away from anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you get to Bristol and you're like, oh, are we nearly there yet? No, another 3 hours. It's really, it just keeps going down and going down another windier road and an even more windy road, and then Plymouth pops out. In a footballing sense, should have stayed at Plymouth. I wish Frank Clark hadn't have left. I think life would have been a lot different if Frank Clark hadn't have left. Shouldn't have left Plymouth. Certainly shouldn't have gone to Northampton Town. But if Northampton Town hadn't have been such a horror show, then I wouldn't have had the musical career I went on to have with my brother and my 2 best mates. That was just indescribable. Just playing shows all over Europe all the time, being in recording studios. So I wouldn't change that for the world. So your path's your path, isn't it?
Yeah. So just to finish, then, I mean, where are you on the path now? Where's life? You mentioned you've got a daughter. You're obviously still involved in music. What else are you up to as well as the podcast?
We were on tour for the second time in Japan, and my daughter had just been born, and I just thought I can't do this. If I'm not coming home with £5,000 in my pocket or £2,000 in my pocket after being away for a week, then I'm not doing it. If it's not commercially viable, I'm not bringing money into the house. I am not going on a jolly up with my mates when I've got a daughter. She changed everything. I'm not doing that anymore. And the band, it wiped its own backside, really. We didn't have to, we got to the point where we weren't spending money. We get put up, get given, everywhere was paid for, everything was paid for, but we weren't coming back with cash in our pockets. So I came back and we all decided to sort of put it to the side and continue writing until we were ready to do something else with the band, with Ulterior. I drove a van and I started businesses. And to answer your question, currently I've got my own business, help to build academies, do some upskilling, and I've got another business that creates brands for TikTok and YouTube stars. I've got those, they're my jobs. But I'm also lucky enough to be of an age where we have a studio in Long Eaton at the old school. It's beautiful, big grade 2 listed building. So 2 bands kind of got to know each other just from having a drink with a mate who's a mate of a mate. And before you know it, we've got a studio where 8 lads pay in £45 a month each. And we've got a commercial standard studio 2 minutes walk from all of our houses. And we go in there every week. I'm in there once or twice a week. I've learnt the sax. I learnt the sax. I sound like I'm John Coltrane or something. I'm learning the sax. I'm at grade 4 currently. Yeah, we've got all Ulterior's kit in there. This other band's kit in there. We've got live drums, electronic drums, loads of brass, double bass, pianos, electric and real, all the guitars and amps you could want. We've built a room within a room, recording vocal booth. So it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I've got an album that's just been mastered. That's going to be out soon with a different group of lads, actually. Weird little thing it is, sort of noise, jazz, a little bit. Can't imagine. I mean, we started it about 10 years ago, so I don't know if you like Nick Cave's recent output, Ghost Teen and Skeleton Tree. We kind of predated that sort of sound. It was just drone synths and a piano, just nice, well-written songs, double bass, bit of saxophone. That's kind of cool. Weird little thing. So I've got that. That's gonna come out. I've written another Ulterior album, so we're currently in the middle of demoing that with Aid Fenton, who's Gary Newman's producer, who's a Forest fan and from Nottingham. So I've known Aid for years, a brilliant producer. And also something very weird happened during lockdown. I sort of retreated into melody and back to sort of my roots with, I think it was a fear thing. All the time, remember that really hot summer, the first lockdown? It was me, my wife and my daughter going for walks, and I just really reverted into like Big Star and the Beatles and Northern Soul and some of the 90s indie stuff, like just massive, big guitar melody. And just chatting to one of the lads from the other band, I was like, I suppose you like all that sort of stuff. And he was like, mate, I grew up on all that. So during lockdown, remotely, we wrote like 50, 60 songs. And they're all just the most joyful, uplifting, wonderful, big, enormous indie bangers you could imagine. So we're recording them. That's what I'm doing musically. So my brain's just permanently on fire. If it's not work, like I work from home, so my brain bounces in between a Zoom call to picking up a guitar, to writing 3 or 4 emails, to then going to pick my daughter up, to then coming back to finishing off some lyrics, to then, yet another Zoom call, to get, some learners enrolled and stuff. So that's how I live. That's what I do.
Last question to bring it back to football before we finish, because I know I'm keeping you a long time here. You mentioned earlier about what Matt said about the Christmas number one analogy. I guess there's the players from that time, like, I'm trying to think, Steve Gwynn and Bobby Howe and Lee Glover, or people who played a lot of games for Forest, probably more than you, but you probably get people coming up to you in the street a lot more than they do, ask you about Leon and those kind of moments. Would you prefer it that way, or would you prefer to play more games for Forest and had that longevity that escaped you a little bit in the end? Which way around would you have it?
The professional in me, and there is one in me, the professional in me says I would much prefer to have had 200 appearances for Nottingham Forest, because like I said earlier, I think I'd have scored goals. I do. But the punk in me goes, nah, mate, I was the Pistols. I got in and out. I kicked off and I left, and that was it. And so, you've got to be happy with what you've got, haven't you? I played for Nottingham Forest in that brilliant period, and I'll take that. That's not something everybody gets to say. It seems that I'm still fairly well thought of with Forest fans, and that's all you can ask for. I was with my daughter at the City Ground for the Liverpool game the other day, and 3 separate occasions I've got groups of lads coming up to me, shaking my hand, and my daughter's like, "Wow, that's so cool," and it is really cool. It's lovely, and I'll take that all day long. And I'd never complain about my career, never complain about Frank Clough not throwing me in or not getting this amount. I got 4 goals for Nottingham Forest. You're forgetting my West Ham one, my first one. So I got 4 goals for him, and great. One was a scissor kick, one was in Europe, and one was against Man United. Happy as Larry.
Brilliant. We'll leave it there. I hope everyone who listened along to this enjoyed it, and we'll be back. This is coming out on Monday as you listen, so we'll hopefully be back later in the week with Lee Wood, and then with normal service resumes. Yes, absolutely. Normal service resumes with Forest v Blackpool review, and then hopefully we talk about promotion in a few months. Paul, thank you very much. Hope that was okay for you.
Loved it, mate. Thank you for having me, Matt. I really appreciate it. And good luck, genuinely good luck to Forest for the rest of the season. I've everything crossed. I genuinely think they'll, at the very least, get playoffs. And if they do get playoffs, I think they've got the spirit and the momentum to go up. I really do. I've got a really good feeling about it.
Thank you for listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.